After the man saw the girl intentionally exposing her shoulder, he instinctively glanced at the lace trim. The man thought the girl was signaling him, so he immediately kissed her. Lucy was in shock, unable to bear being treated so casually. She then went to find a lawyer, planning to demand some compensation. When the lawyer heard it was workplace harassment, and that the boss was the famous writer Klaus, he immediately got excited and started calculating. The damages amounted to a staggering $1.86 million. Lucy's mother's eyes lit up at the news. The lawyer's hint was clear. Being harassed by a celebrity could be a secret, profitable path. Celebrities value their reputation, so they usually pay up without question. Hearing the lawyer's confidence, Lucy felt at ease and sent a letter to Klaus, but Klaus wasn't home. His wife, who suffered from depression, received the letter instead. Seeing the letter was from Lucy, his wife opened it without hesitation. When she saw that Klaus was being sued for harassment, she quickly swallowed several pills. But her condition didn't improve, so she went to bathe her daughter, hoping to calm her anxious mind. But when her daughter mentioned Lucy again, her depression flared up, and she snapped, dunking her daughter's head into the bathtub, drowning her. Realizing the mistake she made, the wife took a whole bottle of sleeping pills and ended her life. When Klaus came home that night, his daughter was already dead. He pulled her lifeless body from the bathtub, holding her tightly in his arms. He then went to find his wife, only to discover she had already passed away as well. On the nightstand was Lucy's lawsuit. Klaus understood then. His wife's breakdown was triggered by the lawsuit, leading her to drown their child before killing herself. Having lost the two most important people in his life, Klaus was devastated, but his hatred for Lucy reached its peak. However, he quickly composed himself and went to court for the compensation mediation with a grim expression. He made no excuses, just handed over the check, agreeing to the exorbitant settlement. Lucy, seeing this, lowered her head, unable to make eye contact with Klaus. But Klaus shot her a cold, piercing glance, determined to make her pay dearly for her scheming. Lucy soon learned that Klaus's wife and daughter had both died. Because of the lawsuit, Lucy had originally worked as Klaus's novel transcriber, and they often worked alone together. Klaus could always create the most touching love stories, and Lucy admired his talent deeply, so she secretly began to pay attention to him and found that he was the perfect ideal man. Klaus's wife was a stay-at-home mom, but Klaus took care of all their daughter's needs, bathing, playing, everything. He was especially patient and meticulous. Without realizing it, Lucy's feelings for Klaus grew stronger, so she began to chat with him during their work together. One day, when she went to transcribe his novel, she found that Klaus's wife and daughter had gone out, leaving just her and Klaus at home. Lucy felt a spark of desire, so she deliberately lowered her clothes to expose her shoulder, trying to seduce Klaus, but to her surprise, Klaus kissed her right there and then. Such directness and crudity shocked Lucy, who had been expecting something more subtle, a slow, emotional build-up. Instead, she found Klaus to be vulgar, not the idealized figure she had imagined. Her admiration for him crumbled, so she decided to seek compensation. Not expecting it to lead to such a tragedy, Lucy secretly cried, feeling guilty. But soon she realized that after the deaths of Klaus's wife and daughter, he showed no sadness. Instead, he threw himself into his work, even appearing on television to promote his new book. Klaus spoke confidently in front of the camera, and Lucy couldn't shake the eerie feeling. Wasn't his suspense novel about murder? One day, when Lucy's family went to the beach, she saw Klaus's figure in a small shop. She was so startled, she spilled her drink, but when she looked again, he was gone. Not long after, her second brother died in an accident on the beach. When Lucy rushed over, she saw Klaus standing in the crowd, staring at her with a grim expression. Lucy immediately realized Klaus had caused her brother's death, but when she looked up again, Klaus was gone. Feeling responsible for her brother's death, Lucy wrote a letter asking Klaus for forgiveness. She anxiously waited for a reply, but instead, she got tragic news about her parents. They had both been hospitalized after eating mushrooms, poisoned. Lucy rushed to the hospital, but her father had already passed, and her mother was still fighting for her life. Lucy knew this was Klaus's revenge. When she worked at Klaus's house, she once mentioned her parents loved wild mushrooms, and even taught him which mushrooms were poisonous. At the time, it was just an attempt to get closer to him, but now it had become a deadly weapon. The horror didn't stop there. A few years later, Lucy's older brother was pulled from his car one night, beaten to death by a burly man wielding an iron chain. When the police arrived, he was already dead. The assailant was a prisoner, sentenced to 25 years for murder, but recently he had received a mysterious letter saying that his wife had an affair with Lucy's brother. So he escaped prison and killed Lucy's brother. Such a crazy act couldn't have happened without outside manipulation. Lucy was sure Klaus was behind it, but with no direct evidence, no one believed her. The once lively family had now lost all the men, leaving only her paralyzed mother and younger sister. Lucy felt an unprecedented weight and fear, so she kept a close watch on her younger sister, taking her to and from school every day. At home, Lucy couldn't sleep. Then she suddenly remembered that John had once been a writer and was Klaus's rival. Because he couldn't write better than Klaus, he had to become a journalist. Lucy called John, saying she had explosive information about Klaus. John got so excited, he rushed over to her house, but on the way, he encountered a fire. A nursing home set ablaze, killing many elderly people. Her mother was among the victims. John was stunned, because this scenario had appeared in one of Klaus's novels. Even more chilling, the arsonist was just like the character in the book, a mentally ill person who tied gasoline canisters to himself. So John and Lucy talked all night, and John wrote everything down, planning to expose Klaus's manipulative scheme. If this explosive murder case got out, it would deal Klaus a fatal blow. So John decided to confront Klaus directly. He took the story to Klaus, who, after reading it, remained indifferent. He didn't hide his contempt for Lucy, and he calmly explained that he had alibis for the mushroom and prisoner incidents. Klaus said he had lost his wife and daughter in one night, while Lucy had taken 10 years to lose 3 loved ones. Thinking of his wife and daughter, Klaus's eyes dimmed. His wife had been a ballet dancer, but after a car accident left her unable to dance. She fell into deep depression after 5 years of treatment. Her condition was somewhat under control, but she was still emotionally fragile, ready to snap at any trigger. Klaus had carefully maintained a delicate balance, but Lucy's lawsuit shattered it and led to his wife's suicide. Klaus didn't hesitate to admit that day he had indeed made advances on Lucy, but he said Lucy wasn't an innocent party either. He then took out Lucy's letter to him, filled with apologies and self-blame. But Klaus saw them as just empty words, because even while apologizing, Lucy had no problem spending the $1.86 million compensation. Meanwhile, Klaus was living a torturous existence. His house, though grand, was a cold palace, with a 10-second prison inside for his daughter. His daughter will forever live in this tiny room. After experiencing Klaus's pain up close, John was left speechless. He had always sympathized with Lucy, thinking of her as a victim of sexual harassment. Not only did she suffer, but her family also faced one tragedy after another. But after watching Klaus's video, John started to lose his balance. Whose pain isn't pain? Whose family isn't family? You can only say that Lucy couldn't hold her ground, and Klaus spent 10 years planning his revenge. He never directly participated in any incidents, but he used Lucy as the inspiration for a suspense novel, a fantasy of revenge against her, with massive publicity. The novel sold 500,000 copies. Readers who got deeply immersed in the story soon learned that the book was based on real events, and they developed a deep hatred for Lucy's family, those with anger or an inflated sense of personal heroism, following the killing methods in the novel. As a journalist, John felt it was his duty to expose Klaus's evil intentions after his mother was burned alive. He kept an even tighter watch on his only little sister, fearing that if he slipped up for even a moment, she'd fall victim to Klaus's hand. But as his little sister hit puberty, she resented the lack of boundaries in Lucy's control over her, and secretly began to fall for Klaus's romance novels. Lucy was now overwhelmed with anxiety, so she quickly took some tranquilizers, then went to find John, hoping he could tell her Klaus's whereabouts. But instead, she saw Klaus on TV again. Tonight was the launch of his new book. Using his press credentials, John took Lucy to the launch event. Klaus was dressed in a suit, speaking eloquently, but every word seemed to be directed at Lucy. It seemed Klaus had already factored her sister's death into his plans. He was truly too clever. Back then, Lucy had labeled Klaus as shallow and sleazy after a kiss, but now, looking back, a person who could orchestrate a decade-long revenge plan was far beyond Lucy in both cunning and intellect. But there's always a way to resolve things. Lucy had John go down to find Klaus while she waited for him on the 3rd floor. After glancing at Lucy, Klaus headed up to meet her. It was their first official meeting since that kiss 10 years ago. Lucy's breathing was rapid, her heart racing. She had been infatuated back then, but now, her family was gone. The brightness of her youth had been shattered by one blow after another. All she wanted was to end it all. She had already felt Klaus's pain, and now, she only wanted to save her sister. Klaus took a quick glance downstairs. For Lucy, death would be a relief, but even if she died in front of everyone, John still had no evidence. The man who appeared suddenly could testify that Lucy jumped on her own, with no involvement from Klaus. Plus, Lucy had taken tranquilizers, which suggested her mental state wasn't stable, so her jumping wouldn't be all that surprising. When Lucy was cremated, Klaus came specifically to comfort her sister, holding her gently. John, witnessing the scene, was disgusted. While Klaus remained indifferent, Klaus had used the power of words to manipulate, passing the blade of revenge into the hands of his readers. Calculating every step, Lucy had hoped to trade her life for her sister's safety, but never imagined that her earlier schemes would ultimately be borne by her sister.